Hello and welcome to the MCQ lecture series. In today's class, we are going to look at some of the important multiple choice questions with respect to international economics. So, let us get started. The first question is, dash is the price of a country's currency in terms of another country's currency, and the underlying options are A, exchange method, B, exchange rate, C, exchange trade, and D, none of the above. The price of a country's currency expressed in terms of another country's currency is termed as exchange rate, and therefore option B, exchange rate, is the correct answer to this particular question. I hope the question is clear. Let us now move to the next. Exchange rate is a price of one currency in terms of another, and its major determinant is dash. What are the determinants of exchange rate, which is termed as the price of a country's currency in terms of another country's currency? The first determinant is demand and supply, the second is consumer sentiments, the third is political stability, or D, none of the above. So, which of the following is the determinant or major determinant rather of exchange rate? So, here the correct answer is option A, demand and supply is the major determinant of exchange rate, which is the price of a country's currency in terms of another country's currency. So, option A, demand and supply, is the correct answer to this particular question. Let us now move to question number 3. Question number 3 is, dash means foreign exchange for India, whether it is A, euro, B, dollar, C, pound, or D, all of the above. So, here very easy sort of question. Foreign exchange means any other country's currency. It is not particularly limited to dollar or pound or euro, but any other currency in general. So, here all the three options are foreign exchange for India. So, option D, all of the above, is the correct answer to this question. I hope that is clear. Let us now move to question number 4. Very important question with respect to current sense. India's current forex reserves are at dash. The underlying options are A, $400 billion, B, $500 billion, C, $600 billion, or D, none of the above. So, here a very factual sort of a question, current oriented question. The current forex reserves with Indian government are in the tune of $600 billion, and therefore option C, $600 billion, is the correct answer to this particular question. I hope that is clear. Let us now move to question number 5. Question number 5 is, the system of exchange in which the value of a currency is allowed to adjust freely is called as what? Here what is happening is the system of exchange where the value of a currency is allowed to adjust freely is called as what? Whether it is A, flexible exchange system, whether it is B, floating exchange system, whether it is C, market determined exchange system, or D, all of the above. So, here the correct answer is all of the above. That means, if at all the value of a currency is allowed to adjust freely according to the market forces, then it is termed as flexible exchange system or floating exchange system or market determined exchange system, and therefore option D, all of the above, is the correct answer to this particular question. I hope that is clear. Let us now move to question number 6. If the exchange rate is fixed by the government, then it is called as dash. A very easy sort of question. If the exchange rate is fixed by the government, then it is called as A, fixed exchange system, B, floating exchange system, C, regular exchange system, or D, none of the above. So, here when it is fixed, the term fixed itself is giving us the hint that it has to be fixed exchange system, because in the previous question only we have seen what floating exchange system particularly means. It is when the value of the currency is left to the market forces. Okay, and in fixed exchange system what is happening is the government is fixing it, and as a result of that it is called as fixed exchange system. So, option A, fixed exchange system, is the correct answer to this question. I hope that is clear. Let us now move to question number 7. Dash is the situation where the value of one currency in terms of another currency or other currency increases. A situation where the value of one currency in terms of other currency increases, whether it is A, appreciation, B, depreciation, C, devaluation, or D, none of the above. So, here the correct answer is when the value of one currency in terms of another currency increases, it is termed as appreciation. So, appreciation is a situation where the value of one currency in terms of the other currency increases. So option A, appreciation, is the correct answer. The next question will make more sense to you. So let us now move to the next question. What happens if the value of rupee in terms of dollar increases from 45 to 44? What is here happening is that earlier, with respect to exchange of rupee dollar, I had to pay 45 rupees to get $1, but now the value of rupee is increasing. Now I have to only give 44 rupees for $1. So here in this case, what is effectively happening, that is the question. The underlying options are A, Indian rupee depreciates, B, Indian rupee appreciates, C, Indian rupee looks good to traders, or D, none of the above. So here, when the value of rupee in terms of dollar increases from 45 to 44 in our example, then the Indian rupee appreciates. So here it is a pure case of appreciation. So option B, Indian rupee appreciates, is the correct answer. Let us now move to the next question. What happens if the value of rupee in terms of dollar falls from 45.5 to 46? Now in this case, in question number 9, I have to fetch 46 rupees to get $1. Earlier it was 45.5. that means the value of rupee in terms of dollar has fallen down. So what do you call such a situation or such a term to explain this situation? Whether it is A, Indian rupee depreciates, B, Indian rupee appreciates, whether it is C, Indian rupee looks good to banks, or D, none of the above. So here again a situation wherein the value of rupee in terms of dollar has fallen down, and this situation is explicitly called as Indian rupee depreciates or depreciation. So option A, Indian rupee depreciates, is the correct answer to this question. I hope the idea of appreciation and depreciation is pretty much clear with respect to these two examples. Very important concept as far as international economics is concerned. Let us now move to question number 10. In order to prevent large appreciations and depreciations of Indian rupee, Dash often intervenes to ensure that the exchange rate should remain within reasonable limits. So in order to avoid the volatility in exchange rates, someone is there who intervenes to make sure that the exchange rate remains in that reasonable limit set by them. Whether it is A, that entity who intervenes is A, State Bank of India, B, Reserve Bank of India, C, all the commercial banks together, or D, none of the above. So here, in order to prevent large appreciations and depreciations of Indian rupee, the Reserve Bank of India often intervenes to ensure that the exchange rate should remain within reasonable limits. So option B, Reserve Bank of India, is the correct answer to this particular question. I hope this is clear. Very important sort of idea with respect to the volatility in exchange rates and how do you correct that. Let us now move to question number 11. When the rupee depreciates too much, the Reserve Bank of India intervenes and dash from its forex reserves and increase the supply of US dollar in the market. In a situation wherein rupee depreciates too much, the RBI obviously is going to intervene by doing what? From its foreign exchange reserves, and then in explicit sense increase the supply of dollar in the market. It will A, buy dollars, B, sell dollars, C, doesn't react, or D, none of the above. So here, when the rupee depreciates too much, the Reserve Bank of India intervenes and sells dollar from its foreign exchange reserves, and then in a sense increases the supply of US dollar in the market. So option B, sells dollar, is the correct answer to this particular question. I hope that is clear. Let us now move to question number 12. The reverse situation or the contrary situation to rupee depreciation. The next situation is, what if rupee appreciates too much? So the question is, when the rupee appreciates too much, the Reserve Bank of India intervenes and dash from the market and reduce the supply of US dollar in the market. So whether it is A, it buys dollars, whether it is B, sells dollars, C, doesn't react, or D, none of the above. So here, when the Indian rupee appreciates too much, the Reserve Bank of India intervenes and buys dollar from the market and reduces the supply of US dollar in the market. So here we have seen two important cases wherein the rupee was depreciating too much, and in such a situation the RBI intervenes and sells the dollars from its foreign exchange reserves and then increases the supply of dollar in the market. and on the contrary, when the rupee appreciates too much, the Reserve Bank of India intervenes and buys dollar from the market and reduces the supply of US dollar in the market. I hope both these situations are pretty much clear. Let us now move to the next question. The next question is, dash is the system in which the Reserve Bank of India intervenes in the foreign exchange market to influence the exchange rate of rupee and keep the fluctuations within the reasonable limits. What do you term this situation or system wherein the RBI is intervening? We have seen both the interventions in terms of a very high volatility in rupee depreciation or rupee appreciation. So, what do you term such a system? Whether it is A, managed float system, whether it is B, managed fixed system, whether it is C, central bank fixed system, or D, none of the above. So, here the terminology used in economic literature to denote this situation wherein the Reserve Bank of India is intervening in the foreign exchange market to influence the exchange rate of rupee and keep the fluctuations within the reasonable limits is termed as managed float system. So, option A, managed float system, is the correct answer to this particular question. Very important idea as far as international trade is concerned. So, option A, managed float system, is the correct answer to question number 13. Let us now move to question number 14. Question number 14 is, foreign exchange rate is generally quoted as the number of units of a domestic currency required to purchase 1 unit of foreign currency, and this rate is known as what? The rate at which we are giving in domestic currency to purchase 1 unit of foreign currency is known as A, nominal exchange rate, B, nominal effective exchange rate or NER, C, real exchange rate, or D, none of the above. So, here the foreign exchange rate, which is generally quoted as number of units of a domestic currency which an individual or institution has to pay in order to purchase 1 unit of foreign currency, this rate is usually called as the nominal exchange rate or NER, and therefore option A, nominal exchange rate, is the correct answer to this particular question. Very important concept in terms of exchange rates. I hope that is clear. Let us now move to the next one. Next question is, dash is the weighted average of nominal exchange rate. It is the weighted average of nominal exchange rate where the weights used are the share of trading partners in foreign trade. So, here this concept is the weighted average of nominal exchange rate and the weights used are the shares of trading partners in foreign trade. So, what do you call such a concept? Whether it is it will make more sense in question number 16. I will just explain you this concept here and then we move to question number 16 wherein it will make more sense because we are looking at an example and then looking at question number 16. So, here the weighted average of nominal exchange rate is called as what? Whether it is A, nominal exchange rate, B, nominal effective exchange rate or NER, C, real exchange rate, or D, none of the above. So, here nominal effective exchange rate, option B, is the weighted average of nominal exchange rate where the weights used are the shares of trading partners in foreign trade. So, option B, nominal effective exchange rate, is the correct answer to this question. Let us now move to question number 16, which will throw more light on this concept, which is NER or nominal effective exchange rate. Suppose the question is this way: suppose the US accounts for 60% of total trade with India and the UK for 40% of the total trade with India. Then the nominal effective exchange rate is given by dash. The options are A, nominal effective exchange rate is equal to nominal exchange rate of US multiplied by the weight of US in the trade, which is 60%, that means 0.6. The next question will make more sense to you because we are going to look at a mathematical example as well. So, here the first option is NER is equal to nominal exchange rate of US multiplied by the weight of US plus nominal exchange rate of UK multiplied by weight of UK. The second option is NER is equal to nominal exchange rate of US multiplied by weight of US minus the nominal exchange rate of UK multiplied by weight of UK. Third is NER is equal to nominal exchange rate of US multiplied by weight of US into nominal exchange rate of UK multiplied by weight of UK, and last is none of the above. So, here in order to calculate the nominal effective exchange rate, you use the formula which is given in option A, that is nominal effective exchange rate is equal to nominal exchange rate of US multiplied by the weight of US plus the nominal exchange rate of UK multiplied by the weight of UK. So, the brackets make more sense, and that is why I have written that in bracket. So, option A is the correct answer. Now, let us use this formula and find out what will be the NIR value for question number 17. Now, suppose that the NIR for rupee and US dollar is rupees 44, that is nominal exchange rate is rupees 44, and pound is rupees 85, that means the nominal exchange rate for pound is rupees 85. Calculate NIR given US has 60% share and 40% is with UK. Okay, so 40% is with UK and 60% is with US. So, we have to calculate NIR. So, here we have seen the formula, nominal exchange rate of US multiplied by weight of US plus nominal exchange rate of UK multiplied by weight of UK. So, let us employ that formula. So, nominal exchange rate of US is rupees 44 multiplied by weight of US is 0.6 plus 85 is the nominal exchange rate of pound into 0.4 is the weight of UK. So, that is the formula for calculating NIR. So, option A itself is the answer for nominal exchange rate or nominal effective exchange rate rather. So, NIR is given by first option. The next two options are only I have switched the nominal exchange rate values and also the values for weightages. So, you can look at them, but the formula which was given in the previous question is utilized in understanding this. So, I hope it makes more sense to you, and I hope the question is pretty much clear. Let us now move to question number 18. Question number 18 is dash measures the relative prices of two countries after adjusting for price levels prevailing within two countries. Dash measures the relative prices of two currencies after adjusting for price levels prevailing within two countries, whether it is A, nominal exchange rate, whether it is B, nominal effective exchange rate, whether it is C, NIR, or whether it is C, real exchange rate, or D, none of the above. So, here dash measures the relative price of two currencies. What concept measures the relative price of two currencies after adjusting for price levels prevailing within two countries? A is NIR, NER, that is nominal exchange rate, second is NIR, that is nominal effective exchange rate, third is real exchange rate, and last is none of the above. So, here the correct answer is real exchange rate measures the relative price of two currencies after adjusting for price levels prevailing within two countries. So, option C is the correct answer to this particular question. I hope that is clear. Let us now move to question number 19. Question number 19 is dash is the weighted average of real exchange rate with all its trading partners. Dash is the weighted average of real exchange rate with all its trading partners. The share of different countries in its total trade are used as weights. Okay, so the weights which are used are the shares of different countries in total trade. Okay, so we have seen in the previous concept which was NIR. So, here a similar sort of concept is there called as real effective exchange rate. So, let us look at the underlying options. The first option is nominal exchange rate, second is nominal effective exchange rate, third is real exchange rate, and last is real effective exchange rate. So, this concept wherein we are using weighted average of real exchange rate, that effectively talks about the real effective exchange rate, and therefore, option D, real effective exchange rate or REER, is the correct answer to this question. So, I hope the concepts associated with NER, nominal exchange rate, NEER, that is nominal effective exchange rate, real exchange rate RER, and real effective exchange rate are pretty. Let us now move to the next one. Which of the following factors affect exchange rates? Which of the following factors affect exchange rates? And the underlying options are rate of inflation, rate of interest, capital flows, both inflows as well as outflows, and D, all of the above. So, here the factors affecting exchange rate are denoted by all these 3 points, that is rate of inflation, rate of interest, as well as capital inflows and outflows or capital flows in general. So, option D, all of the above, is the correct answer to this particular question. Let us now move to the next one. The purchasing power parity theory was given by dash. The purchasing power parity theory was given by option A, Andrew Smith, B, Gustav Cassel, C. Tirthankar Roy, D. Sanjay Subramaniam. So here the correct answer is option B. Gustav Cassel gave the purchasing power parity theory, which is a very celebrated concept in terms of international economics. So option B, Gustav Cassel, is the correct answer to this particular question. Let us now move to the next one. According to the purchasing power parity theory, exchange rate between two countries depends upon dash of their currencies. The exchange rate between two countries depends upon dash of their currencies, whether it is A, prices of their currencies, B, relative prices of their currencies, C, cost of their currencies, or D, none of the above. So here, according to the purchasing power parity theory, exchange rate between two countries depends upon the relative prices of their currencies, and therefore option B, relative prices, is the correct answer to this particular question. I hope that is clear. Let us now move to question number 23. It's a question which will give you a hands-on idea of what purchasing power parity theory talks about, wherein we said that it is talking about the rate between two countries depends upon, or the exchange rate between two countries depends upon the relative prices of their currencies. So the next question will give you greater insights into the purchasing power parity theory. Let us look at the question. If a certain assortment of good can be held in Britain for £1 and in India for ₹85, then the purchasing power parity of £1 is equal to purchasing power parity of ₹85. Thus, the rate of exchange between pound and rupees is dash. Let us assume that a sort of or an assortment of good can be held in Britain for £1 and in India for 85 rupees, and the purchasing power parity is for £1 is equal to purchasing power parity ₹85, and therefore the rate of exchange between the two currencies, that is pound sterling and rupees, is going to be what? So the underlying options are £1 is equal to ₹85, £10 is equal to ₹85, £100 is equal to ₹85, or D, none of the above. So here, according to the purchasing power parity theory, it is going to be option A, £1 is equal to ₹85. So option A is the correct answer to this question. I hope the example is giving you more sense of the purchasing power parity theory. Let us now move to question number 24. Which of the following denotes the criticisms of purchasing power parity theory? The points of criticism, or in a sense they'll ask you what are the limitations of purchasing power parity theory. Let us look at the underlying options. A, difficult to measure purchasing power of a currency. B, this theory can't be applied to dynamic world, it only suits stationary world. The third is the theory uses general price level, and last is all of the above. That means difficult to measure purchasing power of a currency, theory can't be applied to dynamic world, and the theory uses general price level. So here the correct answer is which of the following denotes criticisms of purchasing power parity theory? All of the above talks about the criticisms of the purchasing power parity theory, and therefore option D, all of the above, is the correct answer to this question. Let us now move to question number 25. The major players in the Indian foreign exchange market are dash. Who are the major players in the Indian forex market? Whether it is A, Reserve Bank of India, B, authorized dealers, C, foreign exchange brokers, or D, all of the above. That means Reserve Bank of India, authorized dealers, as well as forex brokers. So here the major players in the Indian foreign exchange market are all of the above. That means RBI, authorized dealers, as well as foreign exchange brokers. Let us now move to the next one. The Reserve Bank of India delegates power to entities to deal in foreign exchange, but section 2C of dash defines authorized person to deal in foreign exchange. The RBI has given the power to entities to deal in foreign exchange, but there is certain act and certain section which defines who is that authorized person to deal in foreign exchange. So, but the section 2C of which act defines authorized person to deal in foreign exchange, whether it is A, Banking Regulations Act of 1949, whether it is B, Foreign Exchange Act of 2020, whether it is C, Foreign Exchange Management Act of 1999, or D, none of the above. So here the correct answer is the section 2C of FEMA, that is Foreign Exchange Management Act 1999, defines authorized person to deal in foreign exchange market. So here option C is the correct answer to this particular question. Very important question and very important act. Let us now move to the next one. Authorized dealers are categorized into dash divisions based on their permitted activities. Authorized dealers are categorized into A 1 division, B 2 divisions, C 3 divisions, and D 4 divisions based on their permitted activities. So here a factual question, the authorized dealers are categorized into 4 divisions based on their permitted activities. Okay, so option D 4 is the correct answer to this particular question. Let us now move to question number 28. Very important question, category 1 of authorized dealers in foreign exchange market. Question is, which of the following are the part of category 1 of the authorized dealers in forex? Whether it's A commercial bank, B state cooperative banks, C urban cooperative banks, and D all of the above. So here the category 1 authorized dealers in forex are all of the above, that means commercial banks, state cooperative banks, and urban cooperative banks. So option D all of the above is the correct answer to this particular question. Let us now move to question number 29. Question number 29 is, which of the following are the parts of category 2 of the authorized dealers in foreign exchange? Which of the following are the parts of category 2 or a part of category 2 of authorized dealers in forex? Whether it is A upgraded fully fledged money chargers or FFMCs, B cooperative banks, C regional rural banks or RRBs, and D all of the above, that means upgraded fully fledged money chargers, cooperative banks, and regional rural banks. So here again the correct answer is category 2nd or category 2 of the authorized dealers in forex includes all of these 3 entities, that is FFMCs, cooperative banks, regional rural banks or RRBs, and therefore option D all of the above is the correct answer to this particular question. Let us now move to 30th question, which is talking about category 3, which is quite obvious. So authorized dealers in category 3 includes dash, and the underlying options are select financial and other institutions, Department of Post, C district magistrates, and D none of the above. So here the people who are or the entities who are given the authority or are the authorized dealers in category 3 are select financial and other institutions. So option A select financial and other institutions is the correct answer to this particular question. Let us now move to question number 31. The fourth category, which is very important, of forex dealers known as fully fledged money chargers includes dash. The fully fledged money chargers includes what? A Department of Post, B urban cooperative banks, C other fully fledged money chargers, and D all of the above, that means Department of Post, urban cooperative banks, as well as other FFMCs. So here again the fourth category of forex dealers includes all of the above, and therefore option D all of the above is the correct answer. I hope all the 4 categories of forex dealers are pretty much clear. Let us now move to question number 32. Question number 32 is dash is at the apex of foreign exchange market. Which institution is at the apex in the foreign exchange market in India? And the underlying options are A central government, B Reserve Bank of India, C commercial banks, and D authorized dealers in foreign exchange market. So here the correct answer is the apex institution in the forex market in India is the Reserve Bank of India, and therefore option B RBI is the correct answer to this question. I hope that is clear. Let us now move to the next question. We have been given certain things and we have to select the correct answer. That is the way in which we are going to approach this question. The question is, the need for foreign capital includes a dash. What can be the possible needs for foreign capital? So the underlying options are inadequate domestic capacity, B infrastructure development, C generation of employment, and D technological upgradation. So foreign capital can be required for all these purposes. So let us look at the underlying options which are available with us. First is A and B, that is the need for foreign exchange includes inadequate domestic capacity and infrastructure development. B, the second is B and C, that is infrastructure development and generation of employment. C or option 3 is C and D, that is generation of employment and technological upgradation, and option D is all of the above. That means the need for foreign capital includes technological upgradation, generation of employment, infrastructural development, and inadequate domestic capacity. So here again the option fourth, which talks about all of the above, is the correct answer, because for all these below mentioned things we need foreign capital. When there is inadequate domestic capacity, we need foreign capital. When we have to engage into infrastructural development, we need foreign capital. In case of generation of employment, we really need that, and technological upgradation as well. So option D or option 4, all of the above, is the correct answer. Let us now move to question number 34. Factors affecting foreign investment in India are what, or are dash. Factors affecting foreign investment in India, and the underlying options are A, financial incentives, B, political stability, C, fiscal incentives, and D, all of the above. So here the financial incentives are one of the reasons, political stability, yes, fiscal incentives as well, taxation breaks and things like that. So that is again important thing. So that is again a factor affecting foreign investment in India, and therefore option D, all of the above. That means fiscal incentives, political stability, and the financial incentives are in a sense affecting the foreign investment in India. Let us now move to question number 35. The question number 35 is dealing with factors affecting foreign investments in India. The question is one and the same. Let us look at what can be the possible factors, and the underlying options are A, market potential, B, market size, C, market accessibility, and D, all of the above. So here the factors affecting foreign investments in India are all of the above. That means the potential of the market, the size of the market, the accessibility of the market, and therefore option D, all of the above, is the correct answer. So now 34 and 35, that means question number 34 and 35 has given us 6 important factors that affect foreign investment in India. So they are A, financial incentives, B, political stability, C, fiscal incentives, D, market potential, E, market size, and F, market accessibility. 6 very important factors affecting foreign investment in India. I hope both these questions are pretty much clear. Let us now move to the next one. The next question is question number 36. Which of the following denotes the ways in which foreign capital can enter Indian markets? The ways in which foreign capital can enter into Indian markets, and the underlying options are A, foreign direct investment, B, foreign portfolio investment, C, foreign venture capital investment, and D, all of the above. So here the ways in which foreign capital can enter into Indian markets are denoted by points A, B, and C, that is FDI, FIIs, that is foreign portfolio investments, as well as foreign venture capital investments. So option D, all of the above, is the correct answer to this particular question, which talked about the ways in which foreign capital can enter Indian markets. I hope that is clear. Let us now move to the next one. Again, similar sort of question. Which of the following denotes the ways in which foreign capital can enter India? And the underlying options are A, investments through government securities, B, investments on non-repatriable basis by NRIs and all, C, foreign venture capital investment, and D, all of the above. So here again option D, all of the above, is the correct answer, which talks about investments coming in a country through government securities, investments on non-repatriable basis, and also foreign venture capital. So here we have seen 5 important, because I have repeated foreign venture capital in the next question as well. So 5 important ways in which foreign capital can enter Indian markets, and they are foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investment, foreign venture capital investments, investments through government securities, and investments on non-repatriable basis. So these were 5 important ways in which foreign capital can enter Indian markets. I hope the questions are clear. Let us now move to the next question. Which of the following denotes the ways in which foreign capital inflow can take place? Foreign capital inflow can take place. A very similar sort of question asked in a different fashion, and the underlying options are A, FDI and FII, that is foreign direct investment and foreign institutional investments. B is external commercial borrowings, or ECBs. C is American depository receipts and global depository receipts, ADR and GDR, and last is all of the above, that means FDI, FII, external commercial borrowings, as well as ADR and GDR. So here again, which of the following denotes the ways in which foreign capital inflow takes place? Inflow takes place. It is taking place through all of these methods, and therefore option D, all of the above, is the correct answer to this particular question. I hope that is clear. Let us now move to the next question, which talks about foreign capital inflows and the question is the foreign capital inflows impact dash variables. The foreign capital inflows are impacting which variables? Option A affects exchange rate, B affects stock markets, C affects consumption and production, and D affects all of the above mentioned things, that is exchange rate, stock markets and consumption and production, also in a sense investments per se. Let us now, I hope the question is clear. The correct answer is all of the above. So, foreign capital inflows impact exchange rate, stock markets, consumption, production as well as investments. Option D, all of the above is the correct answer. I hope that is clear. Let us now move to question number 40. Question number 40 is, what can be the advantages of foreign inflow or in a country, foreign capital inflow to be very precise, in a country? First is increases domestic employment, B technological improvements, C taxes and revenue for the government, and D all of the above. So, here what can be the possible advantages of foreign capital inflow for a country? So, all of these are advantages. That means it increases domestic employment, there is technological improvements and upgradation, as well as there is a chance to garner more revenues and taxes for the government. So, option D all of the above is the correct answer. Let us now move to question number 41. Dash means all US dollar deposits in banks outside the United States, including the foreign branches of US banks. Dash means, very important question, all US dollar deposits in banks outside the United States, including the foreign branches of US banks, whether it is A euro dollar market, B euro rupee market, C euro pound market, or D none of the above. So, here again the correct answer is, it is the euro dollar market, which means all US dollar deposits in banks outside the United States, including the foreign branches of US banks. A very important question from exam perspective, euro dollar market. Let us now move to the next question. The next question is in relation to euro dollar market itself. The question is, when an American citizen deposits or lends his funds with a US bank in London, which may again be used to make advances to a business enterprise in the US, then such a transaction or such transactions are referred to as dash transactions. What is happening is, a fellow, an American fellow, deposits his funds with a US bank in London, which the US bank uses and creates an advance to pay to a business enterprise in the US. This transaction is called as what? Whether it is a euro dollar transaction, B euro rupee transaction, C euro pound transaction, or D none of the above. So, here the correct answer is, it is a euro dollar transaction. So, I hope this question is pretty much clear. Very, very important example with respect to what the euro dollar market particularly boils down to. So, a euro dollar transaction is the one wherein an American citizen deposits his funds in a bank or in a US bank which is situated in London, and that money is used by the US bank in US to extend loan to a business enterprise, and this entire transaction is called as the euro dollar transaction. Let us now move to question number 43. Question number 43 is, which of the following are the characteristics of euro dollar market? A very niche sort of a question. Characteristics of euro dollar market: A, international short term money market. I mean, euro dollar market is an international short term money market. B, unofficial but profound market. C, it is free and competitive market, and D, all of the above. So, here again, which of the following are the characteristics of euro dollar market? All of these are, that is, it is an international short term money market, unofficial but very profound, and it is free and competitive. So, option D, all of the above is the correct answer to this particular question. I hope that is clear. Let us now move to the last question with respect to chapter 6 and 7. The question is, euro dollar transactions are conducted by dash not residents in the United States. The euro dollar transactions are conducted by dash not by the residents in United States, whether it is A, banks, B, government, C, industry, or D, none of the above. So, here the correct answer is, euro dollar transactions are conducted by banks and not the residents of United States. So, option A, banks, is the correct answer to this question. In today's class, we have covered 44 important questions with respect to chapter 6 and 7. In the next class as well, I will cover some of the important questions with respect to the last topic from your syllabus. So, please stay tuned for more. Thank you.